I was a victim, and that God was and still is living free. Now I walk around looking over my shoulders in fear of my own life, because the support in the justice system isn't for the trans girls, especially of color. Now we are here in 2020, 4 months in, and we're at the total of 16 deaths for our trans girls, including the 2 recent murders of Jaida and Remi in Charlotte, North Carolina. I would like to take a moment and thank our CMPD and the community for coming together to catch the killers, and hope that we can continue to receive justice, because a murderer is just that, a murderer. I'm here saying a plea to the community of Charlotte to always respect the trans girls, especially using dead names and misgendering our girls. It doesn't cost anything for a simple respect. Finally, my organization is here opening the door to any school organizations, job placement or career placement organizations that are trans friendly, to reach out to my organization so we can get here. So when we get here again, we won't be calling our girls sex workers, because they're more than that. Thank you, and have a nice day.
My name is Nada, and I use they, them pronouns. I am here because I am Black and I am trans. Last week, I watched a press conference where a cis white man who works for CMPD said there is never a more vulnerable time for Black trans women than right now. A few days later, I saw an Axios report written by a white cis woman reporting on the astonishingly high rates of murder of trans women in our city. And I guess I can say it's sort of good to see that people outside the Black trans community are starting to see what so many of us have been new. This city is not safe for trans folk, and Charlotte has been an epicenter of violence against and to Black trans people for years. We have been in a state of emergency for years, and it did not start a few days ago with the murder of Jaida and Remi, who should still be here today, and it will not end with the apprehension of 2 of the many, many killers and perpetrators of violence against Black trans women and girls. It ends when we acknowledge that this city, and we as a whole, have a real and legitimate problem with transphobia, and we are not working on ourselves, we are not checking our peers, we are not bettering and calling out institutions and individuals who are perpetrating trans violence, and we are not supporting and loving the Black trans women around us. And it's resulting in continued mistreatment, harassment, isolation, and extreme violence against our sisters. We cannot continue to hide this problem away under rainbow flags and articles about how many LGBTQ-owned businesses are in Charlotte. Our sisters are dying. Charlotte is a city that lures in Black trans women under the guise of quality, trans acceptance, LGBTQ acceptance, and safety, and allows them to be systematically slaughtered. And when they die, the police and the media work together to dead name them and paint false narratives about them. Let's get the record very straight. Remi was an incredible hairdresser, a fashion icon, and was very beloved by her friends, her family, and her community. Jaida was a kind-hearted, bubbly young girl who brought joy to the people around her and was also very beloved by her community. They did not die due to their occupations. They died due to anti-trans violence and a lack of protection and support. Their deaths were preventable, and there are clear-cut changes we can make today to prevent the deaths of more of our women and girls. Number 1, funding from both the city and the county being immediately allocated to creating support infrastructure for Black trans women and girls that will get and keep girls employed, housed, safe, and cared for. Number 2, the immediate end to pipelining poor and houseless Black trans women into jails and prisons where they are put in the wrong facility or isolated. Black trans women do not belong in men's jails and prisons. Black trans women do not belong in solitary confinement. Black trans women belong here in the community with all of us. Number 3, the end of transphobic and discriminatory practices in shelters, nonprofits, spaces of employment, home ownership, and rental agreements that keep Black trans women underhoused and underemployed. Number 4, well-funded infrastructures of support that help Black trans women escape and recover from violence. Number 5, and this is one of the more important ones, paying Black trans women, paying them for their labor, employing them, promoting them to high-level positions, hiring them as consultants, donating to their fundraisers, and collectively working to provide true pathways for upward mobility and economic stability. And number 6, changing the culture in our workplace, schools, hospitals, social spaces, and homes to where they are not just anti-transphobia, but they are actively pro-trans. Again, the need for these systematic and social changes have been urgent and pressing for years. They did not start recently and absolutely cannot continue to be ignored and pushed to the side. Charlotte's transphobia and the harm it is causing to our girls and women must be pushed to the forefront and the front page of every magazine, newspaper, podcast, radio station, newspaper, and media source in Charlotte. If you are not talking about it, it's because you don't care about our deaths and our lives, and that silence will be regarded as the violence it is. Let's address and deal with the issues so more girls do not have to die. Rest in power to both Jaida and Remi. They are loved deeply and will be so, so missed by their families and their communities.
My name is C. Michael, and I use Z, Zir, Them pronouns. As a Black, transgender, queer, and femme person who grew up in Charlotte, my heart breaks with my Black trans sisters and community. I am angered and mourning the loss of Jaida and Remi gone too soon. Violence touches our Black trans lives far too often. Charlotte must name the crisis against the most marginalized of our LGBTQ community. Black trans women are not alone. Y'all are not alone. And our community is committed to end the violence against Black trans women, women of color, and gender non-conforming peoples. We know they deserve not only to survive the systematic violence, but to thrive within alternatives which actually serve our sisters. We know that chronic houselessness, discrimination, and displacement that Black trans women face is directly linked to state violence. We believe that lowering barriers to accessing food, housing, gender-affirming healthcare, employment, and wellness can address these systematic violence that we face all the time. We are calling for this defunding of CMPD, and we demand for equitable and accessible housing and employment for Black trans women and women of color. We are calling for the reform of the prison industrial complex and the over-criminalization of Black trans lives. We know that our sisters are not kept safe in the legal and justice system. We know that Kanaka, the namesake of House of Kanaka, was and is not kept safe by jails and prisons, and as she guides our work to support Black trans women thriving outside of the prison industrial complex. We are offering our girls safer community-led alternatives. We know that true justice does not come with arrests, guilty verdicts, or putting people behind bars. Justice does not come in legislation which further marginalizes and sensationalizes trans bodies. Justice comes when we honor Black trans women not only in death but also in life. We know that Remi was a gifted hairdresser and loved deeply by her family and friends. We know that Jaida was a joy, a sister, and deeply cared for by her community alike. And we know we must give them their roses while they are still here.
Yes.
My name is Remi. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a biracial, non-binary trans Charlottean. I rise in solidarity with my Black trans siblings, Remi, Jaida, and all. Being a Black trans woman in America means you're far more likely to experience inequities and prejudice, including extreme poverty, systemic and state-sanctioned violence, and violent murder. My community, including Black trans women, experiences unemployment twice as high as the unemployment rate for non-Black trans people, 4 times as high as cisgender people. They experience houselessness 5 times more than cisgender people and experience poverty 8 times more than cisgender people. It is entirely unacceptable that these truths ever ring true in our community. It is devastating that on top of this, my siblings are still murdered. Because of this, we call on the Charlotte community to come together to redistribute wealth back into the pockets of Black trans women in our community. An important aspect of this work is to provide direct funding streams to our trans community, to continue supporting personal fundraisers of Black trans women. Right now, there is over $10,000 committed by local and statewide organizations. We ask that you match this give to provide warm rest, nourishment, transportation, bill pay, and personal pleasures. We ask you to match our local organizations at $10,000 so we can house and feed our girls. Please take a moment to give at equalitync.org/CLT relief or charlottepride.org/relief. Black trans women deserve joy, celebration, support, in order to continue living out personal realities which lead